Hey, time to start our third video, and I expect this one to be a little bit shorter. I had a nice break and ate some of a pretty late dinner. It's um, kind of getting more into the night. Anyway, I'm hoping we can kind of crack this last one down, and that'll be it. So last time we spent a lot of time talking about, or I spent a lot of time talking about the fine-tuning argument. Okay, we talked about what fine-tuning is, what it is for, let's say, some value to be fine-tuned, or some parameter, or some factor to be fine-tuned, and then we talked about, um, an example of that, such as the cosmological constant, and then kind of we gestured at an argument, which is, look, the fine tuning we see, it makes more sense if the universe has a designer, an intelligent designer. It doesn't make as much sense. It seems wildly improbable if there is no intelligent designer. All right, so Rhoda's going to make his argument clear in the next chapter, but before he moves on, he wants to take on a few objections to what he said so far. So there's three of them. Okay, there's what's called the Star Trek objection, the merchant's thumb. Well, the merchant's thumb is actually part of the response to the second objection, and then lastly the objection that proved too much, also called the anthropic objection. Okay, so let's talk about each of those one by one. I think the easiest to understand is the Star Trek objection. Now, the Star Trek objection goes like this. A lot of the arguments for saying that something is fine-tuned is 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 based on the fact that a universe has to be a certain way to get carbon. Okay. Well, why do we, and particularly carbon needs to be produced by stars. So you need stars in order for there to be carbon. And why do we care about carbon? On page 106, the really nice thing about carbon is that it makes it, it actually combines very well with other molecules, which then makes life more likely. If any of you learned about DNA or RNA, for these to come I guess, so that we can have life from RNA and DNA, what you need is carbon, and for that you need stars. Okay, and for that you need some degree of fine-tuning of the universe in order to get stars. Okay, so what's this about? Why are we talking about this? Because the fine-tuning argument seems to depend on this. Hey, look, the universe is fine-tuned for life. You needed things just right in order for there to be life. Why? Because we needed just right. We needed to be just right for there to be carbon-based life. Okay, and the objection goes like this. Here's the Star Trek objection. Well, should we really assume that all life needs to depend on carbon? I mean, just because all the life we know is based on carbon, is carbon-based, doesn't mean that all life has to be. Couldn't we have life that's based on silicon? If you watch Star Wars, you see that C-3PO and R2-D2 are both life, maybe, and they're not carbon-based. They're they don't really say what they're based on, at least as far as I know. So maybe you don't have to be carbon-based in order to be life. And they go on, maybe you could even have a happy cloud. If the hydrogen gas is arranged in the right way, maybe you could have a friendly, emotionally sensitive cloud. Okay, so maybe the Star Trek objection is saying the fine-tuning argument is not keeping in mind that maybe life could arise in ways different from what we know. Maybe it doesn't have to be by way of DNA, RNA, which are both carbon-based. Okay, so that's the objection. How does Rhoda respond on page 107? Rhoda's response is basically, even if we allow life to be, arising out of silicon or a happy cloud, even then, you're still going to have a high degree of fine-tuning. He says, on a lot of the ways the universe very easily could have turned out, the whole universe would just be it would just be hydrogen and helium. This is, I'll read the quote. This is on page 107, the quote from Lewis and Barnes. Okay, They write, the universe would be a very thin soup of hydrogen and helium. The most that these particles would do would be to bounce off each other and head back out into space for another trillion years of lonely isolation. Okay, so the point is, the universe very easily could have turned out like that. So it's true, you need, it's very, very, very unlikely that you'll have a universe that's going to have carbon-based life. But it's still pretty unlikely that you're going to have life where you're going to have anything, even plausibly that could be like life. Hydrogen and helium just kind of bouncing into each other once in a very long while. It's hard to think that you're going to get life out of that. Okay, so that's the response there. Okay, let's go next to the section called the merchant's thumb. And the objection, it goes something like this. Somebody says, well, all right, I'll grant you that the probability that the universe would be like this, where it's fine-tuned, that's very low. It's very unlikely that we would have it like this. But any way things could have turned out would have been unlikely. I mean, every possibility is an unlikely possibility. Is an unlikely probability. So, we shouldn't be too impressed with that. So I actually just have it written here. Rhoda considers the objection that any value for the parameter, let's say the effective cosmological constant or the other values mentioned, they're all equally improbable, so we shouldn't be too bothered, too impressed with fine-tuning. Okay. Now, Rhoda gives two responses. One is from the philosopher John Leslie, who goes like this. Suppose you are... Actually, I'll just read it, page 108. It's right here, under the merchant's thumb. Suppose a clever merchant is selling you a fancy piece of silk. You're about to buy it, but then you notice that as he is displaying the cloth to you, his thumb has been covering a significant hole in the fabric. Getting a little angry, you point this out. No need to get excited, he replies. I had to put my thumb somewhere. Okay, so the merchant's basically, okay, you're mad that the merchant put his thumb right over where the hole in the cloth was, and you think, come on, he's being dishonest. Well, if the merchant says, well, any place he could have put that thumb was equally likely or equally unlikely, and he just happened to put it in that one. Okay, but the point is, in this case, you should still be mad. You should still think he's being insincere, because his thumb is actually in a place, Rhoda says, where you would expect that we have now reason to think that there was some intelligence, some purpose behind why he would have put the thumb there. Okay, he gives another example where somebody, you're playing poker and somebody deals a bunch of hands and they, turn out like these. Okay, and there's really nothing fantastic about those hands. All right. Versus, suppose somebody deals a bunch of hands and they get a row of flush 3 times in a row. Now, if the person says, well, any deal is going to be equally unlikely, they're all equally improbable. Okay, now, if they said that, you would still be bothered. Why? Because it's not just the fact that it's improbable, but its improbability seems to be something that would be well explained by intelligent design, right? Which is, he's probably cheating if he got 3 row flushes in a row. The chances of getting that is very small. Okay, so similarly, it's not just that, the universe had to turn out some way. Any chance would have been equally improbable. And hey, here's one. It's more like, hey, the universe came out in an improbable way, in a way that is also fine-tuned, in a way that we would think, hey, that should make us think that there was some intelligent design behind it. Okay, so that's how I take Rhoda's response. Okay, it's not just that it's an improbable outcome, a universe that's fine-tuned, That's not that's not the only problem. It's also the fact that it's an unlikely outcome. That would be well explained by intelligent design. Okay, so that's the second objection. The third one, oh good, we're doing pretty well on time. 10 minutes already. Okay, is the objection that proved too much. Okay, so let's get some definitions down. First, there's a thing called a selection effect. Okay, so and what you'll find here is there's a blank. Okay, a selection effect occurs when something about the conditions required for collecting data or making an observation turns out to bias the kinds of observations made. Let's say you wanted to do a survey about, America's, how Americans think about our current government. Okay, so you go out and take a survey, but you just look around, and it's really just all your, fellow college students that you're surveying. Okay, now if you just went to the nearest people, okay, there would be what's called a selection effect, or what we just call a selection effect, which is you're just asking college students, and so there's kind of a bias, right? You're by selecting only the people around you. I'm assuming, let's say you live in a dorm, or where there's a lot of students around you. That's going to bias your sample. Okay, so that's a selection effect. Okay, and because of that, it'd be hard to generalize from your group to America as a whole. Same for if you wanted to try to get public opinion on, again, how people thought about the government. You might think that, oh, all of my Facebook friends think a certain way. Okay, all of my Facebook friends think a certain way. But there's going to be a selection effect, okay? Because your Facebook friends there's going to be a bias. There's going to be a certain type of people that's your Facebook friend. Probably people closer to around your age, more likely to be college students. So those are probably the two biggest ones. Commonly, they'll be more ethnically like you. So you're not really going to get, like, if your sense of how the people are is just from your Facebook friends, you're not going to learn about, like, how, more younger people, or especially the older population, it might be looking at the government. Okay, so that's one example of a selection effect. Now, here's a nice example that Rhoda gives on page 110. Okay, it's kind of long, so I recommend that you read it yourself. But basically, if you go fishing with a net, okay, and you find that all the fish you catch are less than 8 inches long, you'd be like, wow, nearly all the fish in my pond are over 8 inches or more long. Okay, now there might be a selection effect there, okay, because you look at your nets and they're big enough that an 8-inch fish could swim right out. Okay, so now here's another sample. Here's another selection effect, right? That's a way that it's something that biases your sample. Okay, and so you really shouldn't be able to generalize to what the fish are like in your whole pond. Okay, you can't say, okay, most of the fish are like this in my pond. Okay, so that's a selection effect. Okay, now let's turn to the fine-tuning case. Okay, we go, hey, look, it's so unlikely that the universe would be fine-tuned. I mean, it's just crazy how that happened. It's very unlikely. But then the person who gives, this is going to be called the anthropic objection. So we say, how might this be used as an objection to the fine-tuning argument? This is called the anthropic objection. Okay, anthropic objection. Okay, and the name for that there is anthropic objection. Yeah, right here. The objection has been called the anthropic objection. Okay? Now, it's something like this. We also have a selection effect when we look at the universe. I mean, the only universe we could ever see is one where we exist in it, right? All the universes that weren't fine-tuned for life wouldn't have had us in it. Okay, so in the same way that the net is biased in favor of fish that are less than 8 inches. Okay, the universe that we're going to see is going to be biased in favor of universes that permit of life. Okay, so we have a biased sample, and the universe that we could see, only universe that we could see, would be one that that would be well fine-tuned, right? That would be life permitting. Okay, so we should be a little bit worried. Here's how Rhoda puts it on the bottom of page 110. It's right here. Okay, 110, 110, 110. Okay. Initially, it might have appeared improbable that our universe would permit life on the hypothesis that it is just the result of some blind physical processes. But we must not forget that because we are living beings produced within our universe, we cannot observe our universe to be non-life permitting. From this, it follows that our observation of a life permitting universe was not improbable at all, even on the hypothesis that our universe was the result of a blind physical process. So the idea is, hey, just as you shouldn't be surprised that all of your fish were larger than 8 inches, we shouldn't be surprised that our universe is life permitting. So it's not something to be that surprised about. We shouldn't think of it as so improbable because we had to see it that way. Okay, now how does Rhoda respond to this? He's going to use another example. It also goes back to John Leslie, and it goes like this. Okay. Suppose you're standing before a firing squad. Okay, you've been convicted of a crime. Okay, and all the rifle shooters are aimed at you. Okay, to shoot you, and you're like, oh no, I'm gonna die. And then let's say you're in a country where they do this. They're not supposed to do it here. Okay, and they go, okay, ready, aim. Fire! Okay, and they shoot. Okay, and let's say all of them miss. Okay, all of them. Let's say there are 100 rifles shooting at you. All of them miss. Here's what you shouldn't say. You shouldn't say, well, there's a selection effect here. I had to be alive to see them all miss, so I shouldn't be surprised that they all missed. So I shouldn't think that it's not improbable. It had to be that way. Okay, now you shouldn't conclude that. You should conclude, no, even though I am existing in this scenario where everybody missed, I should still think it's very improbable that they all missed me, and I should probably suspect that there's some intelligence behind this. Somehow there's a conspiracy that's leading all of them to miss. Okay? And so similarly, Rhoda wants to say in the fine-tuning argument case that we shouldn't go, oh, well, any universe we had to see had to be fine-tuned because, look, we're here. So that's a selection effect bias. Okay. No, we shouldn't do that. We should be like, no, it's true, that I am alive in this scenario, like in the rifle case, but I should still think, hey, this was really improbable, and I should really wonder and suspect, there's probably intelligent design behind this case. So that's the gist behind what Rhoda calls the objection that proved too much, or the anthropic objection, and Rhoda's response to it. And I think we'll have to end about there. So that's the end of Chapter 6. Again, like I've said a few times before, think of some questions or things that were unclear to you. And go back in the book and read and try to figure out, maybe where you got lost. And even if after that things still didn't make sense, then write them down and we'll discuss them next Tuesday. So, all right, it was fun doing this video series session, and I hope you guys enjoy not having class, but I hope you also enjoyed having the videos. Okay, have a good one. Bye.